Hello, Max right here, and I just find myself in an airport with a few hours to kill, and I was watching a video. I thought I'd make a quick video in response to it. It was an example of what is just one of my pet hates. It's an example of intellectual cowardice that really drives me nuts, and it was done by Cara Santa Maria and Dave Rubin on the Rubin Report. And I don't mean to attack them in any specific way. I'm sure if you troll through my videos, you'll find evidence of some intellectual cowardice as well. This just happens to be an example that I saw, and I thought it would be a good example to base this video of. So let me show you the clip here, and it's an example of not being playful with a hypothetical. Here it is.
As someone that's pro-choice, believes in evidence, believes in science, how do you decide where, like, do you think that it should be a 2-month cutoff for an abortion?
Interesting.
Where do you come up with that as someone that isn't coming from the religious angle, but is coming from the science-based angle?
I'd say abortion should be legal up until 12 years old, probably. I am pro-choice, meaning that I don't think that if a woman wants to have an abortion, she shouldn't be able to. And I don't think that if a woman wants to keep her baby, she should be coerced to have an abortion. I think that a woman should be able to make a decision based on her own body. And in my view, which may sound kind of extreme, until that baby is born, it's hers. It's her body.
Right. So I agree with you, I guess, up until that point. I'm absolutely pro-choice. But a week before the birth? I mean, where, you know what I mean? I know that gets into just a
straw man argument because it doesn't happen.
Right.
It's like the voter ID stuff, you know, like, oh, voter fraud. We got to be careful about that. Women don't carry babies to a week to term and then go, I think I'm going to lose this baby.
Right. All right, so
the woman is the vessel. And she is carrying this child, and until the child comes out of her, it is her body, it is her choice, and they are her rights. And I do think that it's a complicated topic, and I think that that's why it's important that we do talk about it. And that
I know,
more
and
people
I
are
agree with you, and
talking
I
about
almost
it.
regret having said the part about the 1 week before birth because I know it is a straw man, and it's not something that happens. But I think there's something interesting about the when is it really a feasible life thing. And obviously we can't resolve that now.
So why are hypotheticals so valuable in intellectual pursuit? It's because it allows you to very, very granularly, subtly change an example just through successive iterations and find out exactly when your feelings change, what you're hanging your hat on when you notice a change in your feelings or a change in your belief systems. And then once you can really you use that tool to articulate it, and then once you've got it concrete in your mind, you now can test it against universality and make sure that you don't have any incongruencies. A common example that comes up is like debates between libertarians and socialists, and the concept of is taxation theft. And so what you do is you start at one extreme example and you granularly change the hypothetical bit by bit to approximate the where you want to get to and find out when that person changed their mind, when their feelings changed, and then you can know what's triggering that belief system, and then you can test it against universality. So it might look something like this. You might say, if you saw a person, two people in a park, and one looked very wealthy and one looked very poor, and actually you knew them to be wealthy and poor, do you feel justified in saying, hey, you need to give that person money, rich person, you need to give poor person money? If they say no, do you feel validated in pulling out a weapon, a gun, and forcing them to do so? Most people say no to that, and so you start changing parameters. So the next iteration might be, so okay, there is now a group of you and your friends walking through a park, and you see the same scene. And you take a vote first to see whether or not this is morally acceptable to do. Should you do it? And it turns out the majority of your friends say it's acceptable to do it. Now do you feel justified pulling out the gun? And they may say yes or no to that. You just keep going, bringing the approximation closer to real life government. So now a large group of people write it down on a piece of paper that this is a law and you have to do it. Now do you feel justified in do it? And somewhere along the line, the advocate of the welfare state is going to change their mind. And so you really get to find out for them personally why they've changed their mind. And it's different for different people, but it might be the instance of, once you reach 50%, 51% of a large population, then now I feel justified in doing that. And so now you check that against universality and you say, well, okay, so, let's take the Nazi example where Hitler was democratically elected. He had the numbers, he had 51% of the vote, and he was by the laws, he was entitled to make the laws he did. Was the Holocaust just? And that's the value of the hypothetical in the intellectual pursuit. Now, it's a complete waste of time to slow down and actually come up with real-world examples where that's appropriate. It doesn't matter if it's real. In fact, the process is usually so granular that you have to use ridiculous examples to get to the point and individualize things. And specifically with regards to this conversation, they were talking about, what should the abortion laws be? And to be fair, Cara did bring this up. I didn't play it, but she did bring it up. She said, as a lawmaker, you have to, it's a very difficult job being a lawmaker. You have to write these rules such that, they're applicable in all situations. So you actually do have to think about these things as a lawmaker. lawmaker. But the point is to just throw your hands up in the air and say, that's a straw man, I'm not playing this game, is just a form of intellectual cowardice. But the point is to be, if your outcome is truth, if your outcome is wisdom without prejudice, even at the expense of having to change your mind, then you should be so curious about these examples, and you should like testing your mindset against those things, and you should be really, really playful with them. So obviously, I mean, the most common reason that people don't want to be playful with these things is because they don't like the questions they're going to have to answer when they play out these hypotheticals. It's going to highlight those incongruencies in their thought process. And that's why I refer to this as an intellectual cowardice. Another way that this often goes down is you can present a hypothetical, and it's like, choose A or B, and the person refuses to play the game. It's like, well, no, that'd never happen, I'm going to do this. Or I wouldn't do A or B, I'm going to choose C. And then, of course, you can't learn anything from that. The person presents the hypothetical, they're trying to determine an A-B answer. So in this instance of abortion, you start at one ridiculous end of the spectrum. Can you abort a 1-year-old? Well, no, that's murder, right? And then you go to the other end of the spectrum, it's like, well, okay, is it immoral to use contraception? And with the exception of some people who have delegated their thinking to somebody else, I don't know anybody who thinks that. But so everybody, somewhere in between those two, somewhere on that spectrum, changes their mind. And this method of hypotheticals is just a fantastic way to get there. So, you start out, okay, exactly, great question for, 1 week before birth, 3 weeks before birth, the third trimester, the second trimester, the first trimester, and you keep going around. Is the morning after pill okay? And you ask all of these difficult questions, and you find out where do you flip? Where does it become A or B? And then you have to ask yourself the question, well, why did I do that? And I think the really good thing about this hypothetical is that almost universally for people, the answer becomes, that's when it becomes life in my mind. Because that is this whole debate. When does life begin? It always comes back to that. So often you'll hear this argument that it's the woman's body and she's the vessel, and so all the rights lie with her. That argument makes no sense at all, because when the child's 6 months old or 1-year-old, that child is absolutely, completely helpless towards that woman. If the woman was to just put the baby on a blanket, not hurt the child in any way, shape or form, just put the child on a blanket in her basement and just let it die after a few days, not touch it, she should go to jail. I think most people would agree she would go to jail. So the fact that when you have the child, you have obligations. You need to. If you don't have to do it, you can give it up for adoption. And even if you're even if you're not the person who has the child, but if you become the legal guardian of that child, you have the obligation to keep that child safe. You can't just leave it on a blanket and let it die. So if the mother has an obligation after the child's born, it doesn't matter if she has an obligation before the child is born. The only question is does the child exist? Is the child alive? That's where the question always comes back to that. And that is, without question, one of the most difficult questions to answer. On this topic of abortion, this is the one I am most out to lunch on, and to me there is no really clear-cut answer. So I don't want this video to become about abortion. I want this video to be about the intellectual cowardice of not playing along with hypotheticals. I hope you enjoyed this video. I know I'm going to be using it a lot in YouTube comments. I can now just copy and paste this instead of writing all that out in a YouTube comment when people are not playful with examples. So please share this video, subscribe, and look forward to seeing you soon.